Just like that, James. We are live.
We live?
We are live.
Hey, what's up, Josh? How you doing?
Pretty good, James. What about you? How are you feeling on this mighty
You
Thursday?
know, it's getting even more humid. I know we both started our jobs this week.
Yeah, summer
Y-
interns.
you're in the you're in the office of dreams and of kings for you, so should be pretty awesome. I know you've been talking about some trade possibilities with Gladstone.
No,
That
yeah,
makes me
you
really
know it.
happy, taking charge, but honestly, man, it's another day in paradise. It's a great
Always.
day to have a great day. It's a great podcast to have another great podcast. And if that makes sense at all, but yeah, I'm juiced,
Yeah,
ready to
dude.
go, firing on all cylinders. Let's get this rolling, man.
Yeah, James. Let's go and do this, dude. We have the NFC North today, so that's everybody's favorite. The Packers, and then everybody's other favorite team, the Bears. So it's the Vikings and the Lions.
Whoa,
I did.
everyone
I
else.
give you a little bit of credit. Give you a
This
little bit
is
of credit.
my turf, man. This is my house.
This is your division. Your division. I'll give it to you. But yeah, James, if you have anything else, then we can just go ahead and get started with this and kind of make it a little bit of a quicker live.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, man. Let's get this started. Hopefully people are tuning in, and let's have it. Let's make it a great day today. And I guess if you don't mind, I would maybe starting off first.
Yeah, go ahead.
This,
Go ahead and take 30 minutes here, James.
I don't know if that's a shot in the dark or what, but I appreciate it. I'm actually not going to start with that. We're going to go
Wow.
5 minutes because I'm going to talk. I gotta bite the bullet, talk about my least favorite team, and that is the Chicago Bears. Yeah, this team is definitely this is the worst this team has affected me in my entire life. I will give Bears fans that, and I'll give the Bears team credit. This is the worst they've really affected me. I was at not the wild card game, which was a whole other story, which I won't talk about, but the one in Chicago, super awesome. Everyone was really good. Bears fans were surprisingly good, other than a lot of Green Bay Packers suck chants, but people there were really nice. It was a lot of fun. The atmosphere was good. It's just a game, we lost and it wasn't fun. But I'm getting ahead of myself. They had a really and this is the thing with the NFC North, I think, is a lot of up and down off seasons for basically all these teams. There are a lot of
Definitely.
losses, a lot of holes filled, still a lot of questions. And that's kind of where I'm at with the Chicago Bears.
And I mean,
So,
I'll be the first one to say this, and this not just goes for just about it. There's no perfect offseason. You're not going to be able to have an offseason for any team, regardless of if you have over 100 million or if you have 15 draft picks. There is no perfect offseason because this league is so talented and so competitive that you're always going to have to be fighting for every single advantage possible.
yeah, especially, and I think this is the case now, is it's like you kind of have this high of highs, especially with the Chicago Bears, and you're kind of, hey, we're back to the grindstone. A lot of things happened, and especially I'm going to talk about the Green Bay Packers. It's the same thing. Like, there's a whole lot of changes that need to be talked about, and Chicago's kind of the same way. So we'll start with kind of their losses, and surprisingly a lot when you look at it. Offensively, you lose your wide receiver 1/2. I'd probably call him a 2 at this point, DJ Moore. And as much as I really like the trade, you get him for a second round pick, you clear a bunch of cap space. You look at the receiver room after, I talked about this a lot, and they had 3 receivers. It was Luther Burden, Roma Dunze, and Ja'Day Walker, who's a UDFA.
Right.
So there's a lot of questions there. The biggest one, I think it's the biggest one out of all of them, is your All-Pro Pro Bowl center, Drew Dahlman, out of nowhere, retires at 27 years old.
Those damn concussions,
Seemed like a steal of a signing, was an anchor to the new Bears offensive line. And there, the rising theme of concussion concerns, guys kind of making sacrifices for themselves, and I totally respect it. But man, it's a brutal thing for the Chicago Bears to think you have something really plugged up and safe for a long time, and now it is completely wide open. You have no one left in there.
Especially, I want to jump in real fast, especially when
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, as a rookie, was sacked. And how much was it? It was over 70 times.
It was close to 6. It was close. Yeah, it was top 5, I think, all time.
Right, for a single season. So the fact that you were able to go in that next offseason and put so much into that offensive line, Joe Thuney is another great example of someone that they went out and got, Jonah Jackson as well. And then so now you have, okay, now this is going to your second year with this upgraded offensive line, and then almost out of nowhere, your, all pro caliber center just calls it quits after his first year in his 4-year contract out of the blue.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same thing with the left tackle position as well, with
Hmm.
Torpedo going down, basically out for the entire next season, so you don't have a left tackle, so you could count that as another loss because that technically happened at the end of last year. Defensive side of the ball, you lose Tremaine Edmonds, your starting middle linebacker, due to cap casualties. As much as, it was a lot of money, he's still a really good player.
Yep.
Probably the biggest concern I had was secondary. You lose both your starting safeties,
Hmm.
Jaquan Brisker and Kevin Byard, who Kevin Byard was also, I think, a first-team All-Pro. And then, league leader in interceptions, Nate Wright, a guy who kinda came out of nowhere, was kind of a hero story for Chicago. He walks in free agency, signs a great contract with the Jets. So there's a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I do like some of the moves that they did. Trading, go all the way back. You trade for Garrett Bradbury for a fifth-round pick. He's kinda just a stay whole, like a guy, like, he's below average center, but hey, you desperately needed someone. You got to get someone in that room. Bring him in. It's the same thing with the tackle position. You bring back Braxton Jones. You also bring in Jedrick Willis. It's a competition battle all over again.
It's a
Where you
competition.
kinda,
Two guys that are backups last year fighting for the most important spot among the offensive line. It's
yes,
no matter who comes out on top, it's not necessarily a strength on your team.
yes, absolutely, and that's really about it on the offense. You sign guys like Khalif Raymond, a good returner.
Yeah.
Defensively was where the big hits were. Starting with the secondary, you bring in Kobe Bryant, $3 or $40 million deal from Seattle. I like this.
Mhm.
He kind of grew in popularity over a while and was a key contributor on that Seattle team. Gets the spotlight. It's a good replacement for Byard and Brisker. You're still missing that other safety section, but I think they did a great job of replacing that as
Yeah, they
well.
did.
I think it's a solid contract for a guy with a lot of high upside, kind of entering what many people would say the prime of his career. The one I was a little questioned about was the Devin Bush signing, 3 years, 30 million.
Mm.
This is definitely a risk. I think the question is, was it Devin Bush finally realizing his after being a first round pick like 10 years ago? Or is it the Jim Schwartz defensive scheme that made him so good with Cleveland? But still, it's a lot cheaper than what you were going to pay Tremaine Edmonds. Guy gives you a lot of upside coming off of a career year in Cleveland, and you get to pair him next to TJ Edwards, a good replacement. Couple of smaller signings other than that. Guys like I like Neville Gallimore kind of as a rotational
Yep.
defensive tackle, but we go into the draft, right? So overall, you feel like you're plugging in some holes, with some good deals, guys with some upside, maybe paid a premium for them, but that's how free agency works. But you still have stuff you got to do. The draft is what I like. Start with their first round pick, and it's a great pick. Dylan Thieneman, right? It's a really good replacement, right? You get Kevin Byron, Jaquan Brisker. You replace them with Kobe Bryant and Dylan Thieneman. Thieneman, we thought he would be a top 20 pick.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
he was just one of the cleanest prospects of this past year, and then therefore you're basically replacing your safeties last year. That yes, Kevin Byard was first team All Pro, but he's also a guy that's over that 30 age mark. He's had very inconsistent seasons. There's been seasons where he just was a 1 year cut casualty, didn't even start, and there's some years where he's leading the league in interceptions. And then you have
yeah,
Jaquan Brisker, who's dealt with a handful of injuries throughout his career, which you can see long-term effects where he's not able to get more than a 1 year contract from a different team. So you get two guys
yeah.
that are you get two guys that are basically both younger, are potentially going into their prime, as well, that have been able to play not only on the field but play at a very high level.
Both are very instinctual. They like ball hawking safeties. I
Yeah.
mean, you saw that from last year. Thieneman's a great ball hawk, super instinctual. People had doubts about his athleticism, had a really good combine, and they didn't have to trade up. They didn't have to do anything. They just let the board fall to them.
Mhm.
Bam, you get two safety replacements. Same thing with the second round. Your Heinz ketchup player of the draft. Congratulations, Logan Jones, on getting free ketchup for his entire life, which is awesome. An awesome thing to also be a second round pick and get free ketchup for your entire life. Center from Iowa, older, more pro ready prospect. The center draft was really interesting. Not a lot of guys went really high. The highest was probably Keelan Rutledge, if you
Count him.
consider him a center now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or Jake Slaughter, who I guess the Chargers are counting as a guard. So
Yes.
it's an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, so there's an immediate center battle, getting a guy who has played in college football for a while, maybe isn't the most maybe is an undersized guy, not necessarily the biggest, the most athletic, but
Hmm.
he has experience, right? That's what Ben Johnson likes. They like guys with experience, with physicality. Sam Roush, Stanford,
Yep.
like the player, really interested in how the fit is. Si all signs point to Cole Kmet not being back anymore. Roush is basically your blocking tight end and a guy who has upside in the pass game, but, the new wave of 12 personnel, good blocking tight end who has pass catching upside, but really surprising now that spending a third round pick on a third string tight end in this draft. It's the same thing with the other pick. I forget his last name.
Hmm.
It was something Williams from never mind, Xavier Thomas, wide receiver from LSU. When I thought they were gonna draft a receiver, I didn't think they were gonna draft a guy who typically, for the most part, marked himself as a returner
Yeah.
rather than a starting caliber wide receiver,
Especially when you already
which
go
was
out and
really
grab
confusing.
Cleve Raymond from free agency,
Yeah,
who has a very
yes.
similar role
So
there.
it's
So just very interesting.
usually those guys fall later in the draft, and taking him with a third round pick is really surprising, but maybe they think he has some pass catching upside. And then finally, the one I really liked, this was another great fourth round steal, adding that corner depth room, Malik Muhammad from Texas.
Hmm.
I really wanted Green Bay to draft him. Surprised he fell to the fourth round where he was. Really good lanky corner, can kind of get busted up a little bit by some bigger, more physical receivers, but just a guy with a lot of experience, plays really well. So when you talk about the Chicago team, I think they overall did a good job of addressing the defensive needs, right? Filling in replacements, immediate impact guys on your offensive line, except for left tackle, which
Hmm.
definitely has a lot of concerns. Linebacking room, you get replacements. Really like what they did with their secondary, bringing Muhammad, bringing in Kobe Bryant, and also Dylan Thieneman. I think their secondary is going to be just as good as it was last year. There are two questions I have, really. A couple. One, the main thing with Chicago is we're expecting a Caleb Williams jump, right?
Right.
He looked fantastic towards the end of the season. Won a big time playoff game against Green Bay. Wasn't a 4,000-yard passer. Didn't get the mark this time, but there were a lot of him plays. The
Hmm.
question is that what he is, or is he just a consistent quarterback? Finally get over the 4,000-yard hump and get into that elite quarterback echelon, because I think he's kind of straddling that, right? That's what Chicago's hoping, and they're hoping to make. You look at besides CJ Moore, they didn't really have a lot of injuries with this jump. Second jump, right? You low on Luther Burden and Roma Dunze to be those primary targets. Can they make the jump? And then finally, and this is my biggest question and concern with Chicago, is the defensive line. We really talked about, and a lot of times it was, man, if Chicago had a really good defensive line, they had an upside pass rusher, they could be Super Bowl contenders. And they did nothing with their defensive line this entire offseason. They brought in Neville Gallimore, and that's the best player, and he's a good rotational defensive tackle. So, you know what they say, and Dio we trust, and Dio we trust. We're expecting Dio to be that guy. And I'll be honest with you, from what I saw from experience last year, they really, really kind of held back that defense sometimes in crucial positions. So, does Shamar Turner make that jump? Does Austin Booker make that
Hmm.
jump? Who's going to make that jump on the defensive line? But overall, again, I think the Chicago Bears last year put themselves in a great position to be a really good team. And this division is going to be extremely competitive, but they're going to be one of those teams that says, "Hey, listen, although we lost a lot of guys, let's run it back. Let's run it back and take the North back." So a lot of questions. I like a decent amount of the stuff that they've done, but there are still some lingering holes that weren't addressed that
Hmm.
I'm still a little concerned about.
Yeah. There's a few points I kind of want to mention over here. So obviously the defensive line, Montez Sweat has been kind of your cornerstone, pillar among that D line for the last 4 years, but he is also at that point in his contract 30. It's not like he is this
Yeah.
young guy coming up. He's arguably at his prime right now, or maybe even a little bit past it. So you got to look at your team. You got to look what do you have around Montez Sweat. You may not have to necessarily rely on him being the number one guy anymore. And the people they have around him aren't very good. Dio on the edge, and then the interior you have Grady Jarrett, who's 33 years old at least, Glover Dexter has not necessarily
Yeah.
been the best since a third round pick. Austin Barr, like you said, but there really isn't like this big piece that you need to have a very physical defense, especially when you
Does
are
Shamar Turner become that guy? Because he was a healthy scratch a
exact.
couple games, so,
No, exactly.
I just don't know.
Yeah, there's so many question marks. And then I also want to throw another point at you. Looking through this draft, and a big idea coming to the league the last year or so has been what's the best way, but the upbringing of the like 13 personnel, 12, 13 personnel. Now, with the current restriction and construction of this Bears wide receiving core and tight end crew, with somebody like Sam Roush being drafted in the third round, and with someone like Cole Kmet already be on the roster, who is more of that receiving tight end, could we see someone like Colston Loveland be moved almost, not necessarily primarily, but almost first option in that slot and have Luther Burden and Roma Dunze on the outside? Also
So,
because
like, kinda like an Eli Stowers thing,
kind of like an idea of that, yeah, like a
playing that role, yeah.
old Evan Ingram situation, just because outside of those two guys, you just have speed, which, you don't necessarily always want your speedy receivers in the slot because they have to do so many crossing routes and they're not usually big enough to maintain some eye contact. So my question to you is,
Yeah.
could we see an uptick of slot snaps from a bigger tight end like Colston Loveland?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
I think you think about it two ways. One, Colston Loveland really proven himself as just a really, really freaking good receiving tight end last year.
And it had a
He was Caleb Williams. He was Caleb, or sorry, he was.
Yeah, 100%. He was Caleb Williams', best friend, and he had such a slow start. I mean, I remember, our winners and losers from last year, and for those first few weeks, I was clowning them for not taking Tyler Warren.
Yeah. No, this is not like I think Tyler Warren's fantastic, like an overall all around guy, but Colston Loveland's a fantastic receiving tight end. He basically was Caleb Williams' number one connection across the back half of last season. And the other point you got to realize is this is Ben Johnson we're talking about. Like he
Exactly.
will pull stuff anywhere and he will show you crazy looks. And I'm not surprised. Like I would not be surprised if they do that and they
Mhm.
say, "Hey, Colston, like we're gonna line you up all over the place." Right, because now you have that ability. You have that you have 2 more, I'd say, physical tight ends with Cole Kmet and Sam Roush, and now you have Colston Loveland, and then you also have Luther Bird and you have Roma Dunze. So you have a really, really young overall receiving core. You're building that around Caleb Williams. So yes, to answer your question, I could definitely
Yeah.
see Ben Johnson pulling some magic and getting something like that going.
It's gonna be fun to see, especially with an incredible athlete like Colston Loveland, especially with him able to. I think such a big part of this game is his run after catch ability. And we've seen that
Yep,
so many times last year with him taking, smaller receptions and be able to have so many yards after expectation after the catch. So I think it's something
yep.
that we could definitely see an uptick amount. But yeah,
But yeah,
so
that's what I got for Chicago.
nice.
Um, who you laying down next?
Yeah, I'm gonna go over to the Vikings. The Vikings were one of those teams this past year that were dealt with a lot of dead money. They also were in a situation where they kind of just had to release some players because of cap casualties. Majority of those are on defensive line, as well as had some players like John Grenard request a trade out of there. So looking strictly on the players that they went out and got in free agency, there's not a whole lot to be super excited about. The biggest contract, James Pierre from the Steelers, slot corner, 2 years, about 8.5 million. He's fantastic. He had such an underrated year last year for the Steelers.
Mhm, yeah,
Only thing is he's going to be 30 by the time the season starts, and this team isn't necessarily ready to compete. Not saying that James Pierre is not going to be able to be at his prime within 2 years or even that second contract, but it's mostly just a player to throw money at, fit in a spot. After that, they recently went out and were able to sign Jawan Jennings, 1 year, 8 million. I think it's fantastic. I think this really allows
mhm,
this wide receiver room to be one of the most complete in the league. You have a dominant number one in Justin Jefferson. You have a really good, downfield threat as well as shifty route runner in Jordan Addison. And now you have that contested catch, possession wide receiver in Jawan Jennings. I think it's really just
yeah,
a lot, as well as TJ Hawkinson. I mean, that's the thing is the core around this quarterback. Now, I say quarterback because I don't know who the starter is going to be, other than potentially maybe their running back situation. Their wide receivers and tight end group is very good. I mean, it's probably up there as one of the most underrated. And you have TJ Hawkinson, you have Josh Oliver as well, who's one of the better blocking tight ends. It's very quarterback friendly. The only issue is you don't have a friendly quarterback because they did also
Yep.
go out and get Kyler Murray. So now you have Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy fighting for that quarterback one spot. And
One of the weirdest quarterback battles I've
yeah,
ever seen in my life.
I mean, I believe that JJ McCarthy still needs more time right now. I hope it's a situation where he's able to really truly sit behind a quarterback while he is healthy and really be able to take in and be a coach on the sideline. During his rookie year, he was obviously injured, but it also dealt with a situation where he couldn't be on the field because he had dealt with such an injury. If he's able to come in this year and be that backup, like Kyler Murray, kind of take over the offense a little bit and just see from a playback perspective. Because there were times last year, man, it was
Yeah,
rough.
I mean, it's better. It's not JJ McCarthy, Carson Wentz, and Mad
Bro-
Max Brosmer.
Brosner, yep. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't even like explain to you, and it wasn't a thing where he started off really bad and it ended up being like there was promise at the end of his
he just
end of
wasn't good.
the entire season wasn't good. There would be one game where he would have a decent stat line of like 2 touchdowns, maybe 2 interceptions, but then like 2 rushing touchdowns. And then the next game, under 50 completion percentage and 2 interceptions. It just there were so
I
many
mean, he peaked week 1. He peaked week
that's the
1.
thing.
That was his peak.
And here's the thing about peaking week 1 is you peaked when the playbook is the easiest and the most simple and there's no identity to your offense. Everybody has the same playbook week 1. The true offense coordinators, head coaches that come in and develop the playbook, that's when you see weeks 15 through 18, not week 1. So it wasn't a situation where he was just thrown into basically a high school offense and was able to figure it out. But that doesn't work in the NFL. I mean, look at Chip Kelly. You can't run that type of
Yeah.
offense.
Don't even remind Raiders fans of that one, man.
So put it back after this rant. Offseason, their free agency acquisition was good. I'm gonna give them a good there. They were able to get that back end contract of Kyler Murray, basically send him a 1 year bare minimum. It's the same, very similar to the Russell Wilson to the Giants or to the Steelers a few years ago, where he was getting paid so much by the Broncos, and then the Steelers were able just to hand him pennies. Kind of the same situation with Kyler Murray. At least you add competition in a room that desperately needs something. And James Beard, Jawan Jennings are both quality starters. Now,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say, I think you listen, you're in a very difficult cap space spot, and it's value. You got to find
Yeah.
value in your value, like your signings. Kyler Murray on a vet minimum, right? A possible quarterback one. I think it's really weird to me. At least I'll say this
hmm
is, and I don't know if you agree with me or not. How do you think it's blown out of proportion how much people are saying Kyler Murray is the savior
And
Soden? They're basically saying, "Hey, Kyler Murray starting now, we're automatically in the playoffs. Like we're good.
I,
We're
I,
good." It's
the-
completely dismissive.
no, and I think that all goes back to what Sam Darnold was able to do with that Vikings team. And people like, yes, people have short term memory, but when something great happens, people hold on to that hope. So the fact
Yes.
was, this Vikings team
Yeah.
right now is very different than it was 2 years ago with Sam Darnold. Just you look at depth chart, you look at players, the defense especially, very different. That Vikings team was one of the best like well-rounded teams. I mean, that was Brian Flores' like first year back being in as a defense coordinator, and people were already throwing head coaching opportunities at him. So this team is very different.
Yeah, I was gonna say also that,
Mm,
you think about it too, I think another reason for that is they went 9-8 last year
yeah.
and had the worst arguably the worst quarterback play in the entire league. So that's another thing. I disagree. I think the hype is way blown out of
Oh
proportion.
yeah.
There's a reason why why the Cardinals cut Kyler Murray for so much money and said, "Hey, listen, like you're signing for the vet minimum." But then I also like the value of what they did. I like James Pierre. I think it's
Right.
a signing that has a lot of high upside.
hmm
Bolster your secondary, get a good rotational guy, even a starter. Juwan Jennings too. He almost signed for like a $17 million per year contract, but
And then
again,
yeah, he gets a
so
1 year.
stiff,
No,
and he.
he pulled a
Or you
Dennis
go on.
Schroeder. I'm I'm
Yes, he
I'm
did.
making
He
that
pulled
a
Dennis
brand.
Schroeder.
He pulled a Dennis Schroeder. He bet on himself after getting a lifetime opportunity, and he wanted more, and then got too greedy, and then I mean,
They shut him down.
exactly. Now, 17 million compared to 8 million is not nearly as big as 84 million compared to, I think it was like 4 million that he ended up getting, Dennis
Yeah.
Schroeder. But still, the same idea. I mean, it's
Yeah,
full
I mean,
situation.
obviously, it's just stupid. Let me bet on myself, and then I lose, like,
Then
a
you have the
lifetime
opportunity of a
opportunity to
lifetime, and your selfishness is what gets in the way.
but, I mean, it's great for the Vikings,
It's
they're
great for the
probably
Vikings.
smiling because, like you said, Jawan Jennings also brings a different type, really,
Uh-huh.
really good blockering wide receiver, super physical, kinda brings that and he I think I like this a lot too, is he brings a good energy to the team because, man, that team had a lot of bad juju last year and just a lot of negative stuff, especially coming from that offense.
And guess what?
I've talked too much, yeah.
No, I want to throw this last point in you before going to their draft selections. If JJ McCarthy and Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz don't work, Juwan Jennings was a 4-star quarterback out of high school. He's throwing touchdown
Yeah,
passes
there
in
you
the league.
go.
There's your answer. It's Juwan Jennings.
Get a hey, Mohamed Sanu 2.0.
Hey,
Hey, hey,
I'm just saying,
or you know what you just do? You just do Wildcat, man. You just run Wildcat
man.
at this point. No one's done that in forever. Just run some damn Wildcat and
Oh yeah, with who?
let's ramp up the
Yeah,
rushing yards.
33-year-old Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Yeah, that's the issue. Is your running back room is also not very great anymore.
Well, and you lost your center too, Ryan Kelly.
Yeah, so that sucks. But to their draft, where they went heavy on defense, which they desperately needed. Pick number 18 in the first round, defensive lineman Caleb Banks. We talked about this. This is a guy that is that perfect size, has the speed, the strength, never shown on the stat board. He's someone that's always dealt with some injuries. If he's able to stay healthy, this is a very exciting player. The only issue is, can he maintain what he's shown, even at the Senior Bowl? Something that small sample size, is he able to get back to that sort of protection, that sort of talent
Right.
of what people can see what he can maybe be. Second round pick, they go linebacker Jake Golladay from Cincinnati. This is your tweener. He reminds me a lot of Andrew Van Ginkel that they already have, the Vikings do. So, a guy that started off playing more of an edge rusher, then moved a little bit more to an outside linebacker. Super fast, extremely good tackler. And obviously, of course, being a former edge rusher, he's great against the run and pass rush. Love that one. And then they have 3 separate third round picks. Their first one, Big Orange, Big Citrus.
Tris.
Dominic Orange, another defensive tackle from Syracuse. My only thing is both, Big Citrus and Caleb Banks, both because of their size, are a little more limited to, that nose to potentially just a shade in size. So they are kind of almost the same position, which is fine.
Mhm.
Only issue is now you're really double banking on someone like Caleb Banks and his athleticism, that allows him to be able to kind of move around that defensive line, which idea sounds good, except for he is, 6'5", 330 pounds, who's dealt with tons of knee and leg issues, especially ankle. So now you're asking a lot from a really young guy that has not shown a lot on tape, who has a history of poor health. After that,
Yeah.
they go offensive lineman, tackle Caleb Chienerman from Northwestern. This is a great depth piece. He is that prototypical size. He reminds me a lot of Rashawn Slater. A little bit thinner, a little bit taller, adds depth, especially with
Huge. He's like 6'8" or something.
he is tall, but with that being that tall, he is also he's slim. He's about 300 pounds, which for someone who's 6'8" is, well,
Skinny.
yeah, it's going to end up having some issues when it comes to play strength, things like that. This is really good, especially when you have Christian Darrisaw, your left tackle, who has dealt with so many injuries throughout his career. So adding good depth pieces as well as could potentially take over at right tackle for Brian O'Neill. And then their last third round pick, safety Jacoby Thomas from Miami. This is a guy who's a little bit older, has been in college for a while. He really showed up this past year in Miami. He kind of plays a little bit more of that robber middle of the field type of safety, not so much deep zone. He's pretty big also. He's pretty good line of scrimmage. So just adding more depth, especially when Harrison Smith is no longer on the team, just adding more and more depth.
God bless.
Ripper legend. And then Josh Matthias kind of plays a little bit all over the field. So adding more depth is definitely a great thing. But yeah,
Woo, you were running through that. I love that.
it's a draft that doesn't necessarily excite me.
Yeah.
This is a situation where I could see this being no, if you look 3 years in the future, you could look back and these were 3 great draft picks. I mean, these were good draft picks, or you look back and like, wow, those players really weren't able to not just produce, but being able to project to how they thought they were because of all that potential that all these players have. Between Caleb Banks and Jay Goldie, those are 2 players that either have not played a whole lot in college because of injuries or have not played a lot in their position, which means there could be a lot of untapped potential, but it could mean that they also have limitations when it comes to their playing style.
Yeah, this draft is to me all about replacements.
Yeah.
This is draft that looks 3 years in the future, not the present day, right?
Mhm.
They basically had no defense. They had no defensive tackle room. They tried the Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave experiment, and God, what was that guy's name? Number 61 for the defensive tackle, but Jalen Redmond.
Yeah,
Jalen
Jalen
Redmond
Redmond.
ended up being better than both of them.
Yep.
So this team definitely, I have a lot of questions about because this roster looked really, really good for so long,
Mm.
and that's part of the reason why they maintained the 9-8 record. But they went through a lot of changes, especially in the defensive side of the ball, which they thrived under Flores. Obviously, 2 defensive tackles, big guys. I
Huge.
think they're really expecting Orange to be that run stuffer and Caleb Banks to have that pass rush upside, be that developmental piece in that
Yep.
interior pass rusher alongside Jalen Redmond. Golday, kind of same thing. Cashman's getting older. I know they have Ivan Pace. I don't know how great he is. And then also, you lose like this defensive line, this front seven. I have a lot of questions about because they lost three starters, and 3 quality starters, and the biggest one think people are really forgetting about is Jonathan Gennard. Like,
Yeah.
he was their guy. He was a great player, their number 1 pass rusher, had one of the most underrated pass rush duos alongside Andrew Van Ginkel. So you're relying on Dallas Turner to take that step, which he's gotten a little bit better and has shown some flashes, but he hasn't really. So this front seven definitely I have a lot of questions about. And then obviously replacements, Harrison Smith. You're forgetting about the other replacement. They drafted Michigan fullback Max Bredesen in the 5th round to replace the legend
Oh,
Ham.
CJ Ham. I forgot. Yeah, he retired.
Yeah, so they're bringing in him. This Vikings draft classes, as Vikings fans know, have been really not great.
Yeah.
Other than just the Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah era of drafts have been really, really bad. Like, I mean, you look back, Lewis Cine, like you look back at the draft.
No, they're
There are very few guys that I'm like, who are these people?
mhm.
I'm like, or that guy was drafted in the 1st or 2nd round, and that's why he was gone, and they didn't have a general manager for this draft. If you
Yeah,
knew
you
that.
know,
They didn't have a
yeah.
guy in the front office. They're trusting that coaching staff, and his Vikings team went from 14-3 to an extreme offensive disappointment. You do bring back Brian Flores, which I like, and I think the offense is in a position to really thrive under the right quarterback play.
Mm.
Right? And I think people are saying, "Hey, they got Kyler Murray," but this isn't prime Kyler Murray where he was getting beaten the wild card.
Hey,
Kyler Murray, who just got cut for off a 200-300 million dollar contract, and the Cardinals are taking up, and he's going to Minnesota. I said it. I'm going to say it again. He's going there for pennies.
yeah.
There's a reason why, So I'm not on the bandwagon where I'm like, oh my God, they got Kyler Murray. Justin Jefferson's going for 1,700 yards. They're gonna, Kyler Murray's gonna be in the Pro Bowl. Justin Jefferson's gonna be back to his glory days. The defense is gonna be the exact same. These guys are gonna tear it up like Brian Flores. Obviously Brian Flores is a fantastic defensive coordinator, does all this crazy stuff. But you got a lot of new faces in that building. And then too, offensive line is a big question,
Mhm.
right? I do like the Caleb Tiernan pick because those guys have been getting hurt so much and there are so many issues, right? You invested a lot in that offensive line and they were disappointing to say the least last year. How consistent do they stay,
Mm.
especially with possibly a new quarterback room in there?
No, it's this team especially looking back at like the last few Vikings teams as well. I mean, you talked about the offensive line. There's a real chance here that this team is closer to having a full on, interior explosion between because you do have those big personalities and players like Justin Jefferson. There were rumors last year of him potentially even requesting a trade. I think they're closer to something like that happening than they are to sniffing the playoffs, especially in such a competitive division as well. I don't I
Mhm.
mean, both Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy, to me, there's no way that they are able to win a game in the playoffs with this team. Or honestly, at this point in their careers, with any team.
Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson is over at 30 years old, 30 years old. He's dealt with tons of injuries this past year, as well as when he was on the field. Yes, there might have been a little disconnection between the tight end and the quarterback, but at the same time, he was less productive. Justin Jefferson had his worst year. Again, you can kind of throw that on the quarterback, but regardless of that, you have a very poor aging running back room with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Both those guys are not explosive. This is a team that you're desperately missing that explosiveness. Jordan Addison can't stay off, can't stay out of trouble in the offseason or off the field. And as well, and this defense, your leader, one of your best players, John Gennard, requested a trade out of there. What does that say to the unit on defense? That's your veteran. That's a guy that you went out and like got basically traded for a few years ago to come in and be that tone setter. And what does he do? He leaves. He doesn't want to be here
Yeah.
anymore. So now you're relying on band-aids like Dallas Turner, who was a former first-round pick, but really has not shown that much throughout his career as well. I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel is great. He's one of the best, screen sniffers in the league, but I don't think he's a true number one. I think he
Mhm.
really relied on the scheme last year and be able to take so much attention off of him. But this team, to me, I think it's a lot closer to imploding on itself than even close to having any sort of playoff success.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, they tried to contend and it blew up in their face. And you can thank Sam Darnold for that one. He
Uh,
wasn't seeing ghosts in Seattle when they won the Super Bowl. So, but
I
yeah,
I
yep,
mean, it's going to
a
go
lot
down
of
as
stuff.
one of the biggest, one of the poorest quarterback decision making of all time, letting both Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones go for JJ McCarthy at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I think more and more times it's going to become more and more of a situation where you look back and you just can't believe it.
Yeah. Whew,
But
man.
yeah,
A lot of diss on the Vikings,
a
man. I
lot of
mean,
diss on the Vikings.
wish not the best, but I wish they were decent, because I'm a Packers fan, but I'm not I try not to be that much of a hater, but I do have a lot of questions about this team,
Yeah.
probably more than any other team in the NFC North. But speaking of a lot of stuff going on with a certain team, we're going to my team, and that's right, I said my team because it is my
Hmm.
team, and it's only my team, and that is the Green Bay freaking Packers.
Go
Wow,
Pack,
this was
go!
yeah, bud.
Oh yeah.
I'm horrible at it, I got a lot
Hmm.
of friends who say it a lot better than I do, but yeah, this was a really chaotic offseason. Cap space wasn't bad, it wasn't great, but you definitely knew there were gonna be a lot of walks because of the draft situations and contract situations and not really wanting to sign everyone back, and there were a lot of guys that left. Start with some of the big money guys. I don't really know where to start because there's a decent amount, but I'll start with the guy that I was a big fan of and I thought was a free again, great pickup, but it sucks, is Malik Willis.
Yep.
I don't think he was really important for Green a lot of close games, especially when Jordan Love was hurt for short stretches. He was fantastic, and that's why he got a contract that he wanted. So backup quarterback was actually, is a really important move. Talk about some other money guys. Quay Walker, starting middle linebacker for former first round pick, going to the Raiders for a decent amount of money. Same thing with Romeo Dobbs going to New England for I think it's like $70 million, which it's a lot of money. I
Yeah.
like Romeo Dobbs, but 70 million for someone who's never had over 1,000 receiving
Who's
yards
never been a
is a
wide
lot.
receiver one.
Yes. They traded Dontavian Wicks for some draft capital, the Eagles for next year. So you lose another wide receiver. Then on the defensive line side of the ball, or offensive line side of the ball,
Mhm.
or technically defensive line side of the ball, you lose Kingsley Anagabari, who is a great run stopping defensive end. Then on the offensive line, you lose two guys who have been there for a long time. Elton Jenkins, who I was expecting to leave, and then Rasheed Walker, who I knew was going to leave, but I wish they signed him back for the contract that he got with Carolina. So
No, for
you
sure.
lose a lot of guys. Like you lose a starting wide receiver, starting middle linebacker, you lose two starting offensive linemen, you lose your backup quarterback, you lose some rotational pieces, a lot of holes to fill. So definitely they did it in interesting ways. I definitely have some questions, but I expect some replacements to come in there.
Right.
Uh, for example, at the left tackle position, I expect Jordan Morgan to step in at that left tackle. He's been really up and down. Basically, got benched at guard for Anthony Belton. But in his limited snaps at tackle, he actually looked a lot better than he did guard. I think his frame is suited more for tackle
Mm.
than it is for guard because he was not really good in run blocking whatsoever. The other things,
Matthew
you're
Golden.
obviously you looking for replacements. Yeah, Romeo Dobbs, Matthew Golden, right? I feel a little more confident about this one. I like Matthew Golden. I think in what I've seen from him, just the way he moves, the way how athletic he is, I really do think it was that Green Bay just really was just using the guys they already had and giving Matthew Golden time for some reps, which was absurd, at least to me, because when he actually got a chance to play, he played really well. And then for linebackers too, I get to talk to some of the signings, I guess, starting now because I don't want to go off on
Yep.
every single roster hole. Linebacker, you acquire a new guy, Zaire Franklin, in exchange for Colby Wooden. I like the trade, and I have a lot of questions. I like the trade because I think it's Colby Wooden to me was a below average tackle, a rotational guy who just really didn't do much, was just kind of a standstill guy who you brought in when all the other guys were tired. And you get a former team captain, a guy who was a former Pro Bowler, a leader of the Colts defense, right? You get a starting middle linebacker. The issue is he was the third worst ranked linebacker in the league last year. But I think, obviously, I think he still has upside, still could change. You bring in a veteran guy to kind of lead and coordinate a defense, hopefully under Jonathan Gannon. That's the other thing, too, is coaching changes. You lose your defensive coordinator and your special teams coordinator. So hopefully he can kind of bounce back to his glory days. I'm having faith, but still, I think it's a really, really risky move to, obviously it's a lot cheaper than what Quay Walker was worth, but like you said, it's the third worst ranked linebacker in the league last year. Can he bounce back to his former glory days? Two that I liked, and the other two signed a couple, Sky Moore finally getting a returner. We haven't had that in forever, and every time we've had returners, they've given me nightmares.
Well, you don't
So
like
hopefully
Amari
he
Rogers?
Oh, yeah, Amari Rogers, Mecole Hardman, Romeo Dobbs, Keyshawn Nixon was good for a year,
Right. Was
really
was
bad.
there for a while.
That's, like, the best we've had,
Yeah.
right? That's it.
Ty Montgomery.
God, stop it, stop it. The voices in my head. A couple other ones, Benjamin St-Juste,
Mhm.
former, Commanders and Chargers corner. Interesting, he's huge. He's a massive corner. Was actually graded as one of the best, I think it's man-to-man corners out of all corners last year, but played limited snaps. It's good to have finally some rotational pieces on the cornerback room because yikes, not very good. And then another one I also like that I think fits, and that's what they really try to go for, I think, is fitting Gannon's scheme, is Javon Hargrave. You don't see Green Bay signing a lot of veterans, and Hargrave coming over, I think it was like 2 years, 23 million. You get a defensive tackle next to Devontae Wyatt, definitely more of a pass rushing defensive tackle who still is solid in run stuffing. But again, a veteran kind of leader guy, had a little bit of a down year with Minnesota, but still played decent. So I like those moves. But overall, you definitely lost more than you gained, but I think you're expecting replacements to come in, fill in those gaps, kind of like with Jacksonville. Like you're expecting some
Right.
replacements to come in, fill those gaps, but you did make some moves to bolster up some positions of need, especially add some depth on that defense as well. So, and then the draft, no first round pick. I say our first round pick is Micah Parsons. And for a
That's
first round
fair.
pick, that is completely fine with me. I give that an A+ pick. Second,
Might have lost James there for a second.
really good against the run, really jumpy press coverage, but is needs some refinement, needs work, is definitely more of a raw prospect player,
Mhm.
but has upside to become a starting corner in year one. I'm actually surprised they took a corner in round two because usually they just ruin me with some of the stuff. So, I think it's a good pick. I like it. The other ones are interesting. I'm gonna name three guys really that are the three main guys I guess, to talk about. Round three, you take Missouri defensive tackle Chris McClellan. Had 7 sacks his last year at Missouri, which is actually pretty decent for a defensive tackle, but he
Yeah.
is basically your two gap guy, good run stuffer. Needs some more, has some has some refinement issues, needs to work on his technique, needs to work on his knee bend, needs to work overall on his consistency, but he is a playmaker defensive tackle and will probably be their two gap guy.
As well as adding so much interior D-line depth allows someone like Devontae Wyatt to kinda take his time rehabbing from his big injury last year, so he's not rushed back on the field with Javon Hargrave, as well as their big defensive tackles that are able to get to the quarterback, so kinda let you guys come back and recover a little bit before the big season.
Yeah, get bodies in there, gives better one-on-one looks for other guys that are trying to get in, and then a couple of other ones, or 2 more, I guess, was the last 2
Mhm.
I'll say. Did I Dennis Sutton, 4th round pick out of Penn
Yep.
State. I like this pick. Again, really freakishly athletic. I mean, you look at his size, and he looks just like a pass rusher, but still has a lot of refinement issues, needs a lot of work, needs to just be lower when he plays. He plays really high sometimes, but he is a nose for the ball, makes plays, has a good motor, and is just a big dude, man. He's a
Yeah.
big dude. I like that, getting size on the defensive line. So I think he could make some impact year one.
And
Still, again,
yeah, and he's someone that I watched out of college for a little while. He's someone that's been so incredibly consistent throughout his game.
yes,
I mean, you look at his stats from the last 3 years, they're very similar. He's a guy that's that perfect, that modern edge kind of build where he is not only tall, lanky, but he is also pretty thick when it comes to being able to set the edge for the run game. As well as he's a guy
yes,
that's the last 2 years, he got 8.5 sacks in both seasons, both being the number 1 pass rusher with Abdul Carter out of there, as well as 2 years ago with their Penn State with Abdul Carter is he was able to be both that number 1 and number 2 edge rusher and be able to dominate in the run game as well as the pass rush.
yeah. I mean, I don't mind that at all. But
Mhm.
again, refinement, refinement, refinement. You need development because you still have a lot of raw traits. Then finally, arguably one of my favorite picks to the draft is trading 2 7th round picks to go back up in the 6th round and draft Trey Smack, kicker out of Florida.
Yep.
Thank God. Talk about one of Green Bay's biggest needs for the past forever since Mason Crosby left is kicker. I really thought McManus was, and I was buying the hype train because, man, I'll tell you, you take me back to those days where he hit 2 game-winning field goals back to back. I was like a kid in a candy store.
Just
But
don't let him on an international plane is all I'm asking.
yes, I mean that was brutal. But hey, Trey Smack,
Yeah, Trace Mack.
he's your
New
guy.
kicker.
He's your guy. He's your guy, He said it best during COVID when the lacrosse posts were chained up and closed, the goal posts were open, so I started kicking. I like that. Good for
So
you.
funny.
But yeah, consistent kicker, kind of fits the modern kicker range, can kick really far, really consistently, really accurately. So I don't mind trading those picks to get a guy you think can be your starting kicker for the next 10 years because by God, we have not had that. So overall, I'm gonna be honest with myself. I like some of the moves that Green Bay did. I think they addressed positions of need, addressed some of their losses, but you have a lot of questions with guys who just haven't been consistent guys yet, who you're expecting to come in and contribute right away at a consistent level. Green Bay is really relying on and kind of like Jacksonville, relying on their coaching staff, relying on their plans, bringing in guys who have raw talent that have need refinement or have just been inconsistent. And they're saying, listen, you have great physical traits. We got you for a reason. Now go out and play some good football. So, although I'm excited to see so many new faces on the team, I am a little worried that, some of them are going to work and some of them are going to fall flat on their face. So, I still have hope. I still think this team is really poised to have some great things, especially when Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft, Zach Tom comes back. And then I didn't even say the craziest
Yeah,
part
well, I was
of
about to
this
bring
whole
it up,
thing yet.
but I was
Yeah,
gonna
this could be another really rough thing. And I don't even know. I think I've just been bearing this in my mind is Josh Jacobs getting arrested
yeah,
on 5 counts of
so yeah, so I'm gonna kinda speak on this just so you can kinda keep it out of your mind for a second.
yeah, I would you're gonna yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw some ideas out here. This Packers team, very similar to the Jags team as well as similar to the Vikings and a lot of these other teams that didn't necessarily make 10 plus acquisitions of free agency. They're really relying on a few different things. Not only the players that they already have in the building, if that's first year contracts or players that they've been able to develop from contracts, UDFAs, things like that, as well as the ideology in the building. They're really hoping that some of these players can come in and can build towards being able to fit the motivation, be able to fit the scheme that this offense defense is handling,
Yeah.
which is all good. That's always something that it doesn't always look like a team has upgraded by looking at their depth chart one year compared to another, necessarily compared to situations like at the end of the year, you look back, you're like, wow, how did this player not end up being a starter week one situation? For
Yeah.
example, for the Jaguars, Parker Washington, really was able to explode the last 4 weeks. For the Packers, there were so many situations where you had offensive linemen that outplayed different offensive linemen, or situations like that where they were able to develop over time. And then when they finally got their opportunity to show, they were able to pop off.
Yes.
Now, like I said, it's all good to see. That's a situation where it's hard to, before the season starts, before you watch film of these players and these schemes, it's hard to be able to look at all these players and then be able to predict what the outcome or what their ability is going to be. All that's great. Then you have a situation like the Packers are having right now, where a star player of yours, who a leader on the team, a player that's been, I don't want to keep on like throwing stuff at your face, but a player that throughout his career has been a big speaker when it comes to underprivileged. He has an amazing story of growing up being homeless and living in his
That's
car. Right. You have a situation where
He
you
was
pay.
homeless. He was homeless. He
Yeah,
felt
he
like
slept in
he
his
thought a bed
car
was
and
so
then
comfortable.
he choked out his girlfriend. You have a situation where you have your big time
You don't
leader
know yet.
comes out and there's a big situation where he
It was like
did
one
he
or
turn
two
himself
count
in?
fel one or two felony counts,
It was five
and
total.
and it was 5 total, and
I
I
know
think 1 or 2 felony counts,
it
and
was
he
strangulation.
got called to the place,
Yeah.
and he got arrested, and then I think it was like 1,600 bail. He got bailed out, but, obviously with the felony counts, it's court, and I'll kinda break this down
Yeah,
is
I'm gonna say one part real. I'm gonna say one part. You can take the player out of the Raiders team. You can't take the Raiders out of a
I
player.
knew you were gonna say that. I've heard this. Yes, I've heard that before. Oh my god. It's
Hey,
like same thing with Bama too.
all I'm gonna say is this.
Henry Ruggs
I was about to say
fucking on the jail phone.
the new Longest Yard movie that I'm sure is gonna come out soon has some real the chain gang of Henry Ruggs, Diego Palvia, Josh Jacobs, and all these other players are going to go crazy when it comes to the chain gang in the next Longest Yard.
Oh, it's insane. So it sucks. This is like awful. So I'll break it down. Yeah, 5 counts, felony, not great. Basically, I think if he gets, like, convicted of the felony charge, it is minimum 6 games, minimum, right? And that's,
Yep.
like but it could be a whole lot longer. But again, it's an if, right? I'm not saying that he didn't do it. I'm not saying that he didn't do it. It's you gotta let the justice system play it out. But yeah, this is all the for a Packers fan, it's a horrible look.
Hey, go and get James
Josh
Pierce
Jacobs,
Jr.'s lawyer on the phone right now.
I know.
Get him to Josh Jacobs.
This is the yeah, and like you said, Josh Jacobs was a big time leader for the Green Bay offense, was very vocal, had a fantastic story, did a lot for the community. Packers fans respected him. He goes out and does really stupid crap or some really stupid crap. He gets in, and your star running back is out just absolutely when you need him when the time comes. Yeah, this could not have come at a worse time. Especially, I don't want to like disregard the whole thing because obviously it is a serious offense, but I
Right.
don't really want to speak on it too much because I don't know what is what. I want to let the justice system figure
Ex-
its way out. If he
exactly.
doesn't, if it's like, hey, this was all bullshit, then screw whoever did it. But if it's not, then shame on you, Josh Jacobs. You should probably get cut from the team. You don't do that. Like you don't
Yeah.
do that. I don't even know why you're in this situation. So,
Exactly.
um,
And like a few last points, the off season can be some of the best times for some teams and can also be some of the worst. There's some teams that are so excited for the draft and they're so excited to see your rookie players play. And then there's some fans that are fans of certain players or certain teams that have a tendency to get in some legal issues. Rashi Rice, another big example. Being in jail
Being in
for
jail for
30
30
days.
days.
So there's the offseason allows a lot of not only opportunities, but also allows a lot of players to not necessarily be in the right mindset being away from such a competitive game. And that does tend to lead for some players to go extreme on other sides. So,
People forget character concerns, especially with, and it comes back to sometimes
yeah,
their background, where they've grown up, the amount of money that they have, the
exactly.
fame. It's kind of the underbelly of the NFL world, and it
Hmm.
is a very and there's that's a whole other entire video on its own. But
Exactly.
yeah, it is not good for Green Bay. It's not good for the organization. The running back room now is Chris Brooks, who's a running back 2, running back 3, and Marshawn Lloyd, who I don't even think has played a regular season game because he's been
Yeah.
hurt so much. And now, like, listen, if he gets suspended, to me, it's like you can't run out with that. You're gonna, and there are a lot of veterans on the free agent running back market, but again, it's just not the same. And so, yeah, I don't know how this is gonna play out, but no matter what, this is not good publicity. This is not good for Josh Jacobs. I would not be surprised if there is some sort of suspension, no matter how long it is. But we shall see. But yes, I forgot to add that. That is the pile of trash instead of the cherry on top of the kind of bland Sunday. So overall, but yeah, I'll stick with kind of my guns with some of the stuff besides the Josh Jacobs incident, which is a whole thing on its own. Josh Jacobs incident, which is a whole thing on its own. I like the offseason. I like some of the stuff that they did. I like some of the additions, but I think there are a lot of guys that really are going to have to step up in new positions that have had some experience before, but hey, listen, this is the big leagues now. This is full time. Let's see what you can do. So I am excited for it. But wow, we have talked about the Green Bay Packers for a
Yeah.
very long
Which
time.
which is fine.
At least I have. So, it happens. Our favorite teams get some love.
Exactly.
Get that 30-minute segment for that, maybe 45. But anyways, we can't forget the last and not least team, okay team. And that, Josh, is your turn. I'll let you have it over.
Yeah, the last team in the NFC North is the Detroit Lions. This is another team that I know had such high expectations last year. We had a lot of question marks going in, especially with two huge pieces of that organization leaving, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. So we had a lot of questions, as well as just like smaller ones, like if is Jared Goff going to be able to lead them into the playoff run? That defense has been very up and down. So their offseason is very interesting to me. They did make some moves. I think one of the biggest ones, maybe not necessarily impact on the field, but impact in the community as well as the just in the front office and the team is trading away David Montgomery. He's been maybe not your best running back, but he's been that leader.
No
He
more
does.
knuckles, man. No more
I know.
knuckles.
You trade away one half of one of the best running back duos. So that was another kind of big move. Now they did go and replace him with someone that's similar in play style, and Isaiah Pacheco. Is he as good? There's a lot of question marks, injuries, things like this. To me, that's a little bit of a decline. Now they did make one big time move. That's go get center Caden Mays after Frank Ragnow retired and then tried to come back in the field of physical and then stayed retired. Whole situation there. But Cade Mays, 3 year, 25 million. This is, and we talked about it when it happened, one of the best
Yeah.
contracts in free agency. This is a player, Cade Mays, who is exceptional at all three places in the interior. He is, extremely good in both the pass and the run. And he's a guy that's right there at his prime. He's 27, just turned 27. So he really should be able to hit the ground running and be able to command this Lions offensive line to what it was, at least the interior, the last few years.
Yeah.
Other than that, they made some other moves. They got corner depth in Rocky Sin, as well as Roger McCreary. Both these are 1 year deals. Rocky Sin's 3 years. He had a little bit of a career resurgence with them last year. And Roger McCreary, 1 year, basically almost minimum, low under 1.5. He had some really good moments last year. Obviously, it was dealt with a trade mid-season. Other than that, they didn't do a whole lot. They got a pair of former Jags, Ben Barch, Jay Tufele. Other than that, there's just some depth. So their draft, which I am still really confused about one part of this, and that is their first round pick. Blake Miller I love him as a player. I think he is a really good tackle. He's had truly 4 years of experience. Now, here's why I still don't understand. You drafted Blake Miller with the knowledge of him being strictly a right tackle. I understand you've talked in the past of moving Penny Sewell to left tackle and what they're going to do. My question is this: why move the best right tackle, maybe either the best or second best right tackle in the game, to a position over at the left side where he hasn't played? He didn't play that in college, just to have a rookie play right tackle when you had someone like Monroe Freeling go 3 picks later, who is that left tackle. I don't understand. Not every offensive lineman is Tristan Wirfs. There's only one player in NFL history who's gotten a first team All Pro at both tackle spots, and that's Tristan Wirfs. I'm not saying Penny Sewell can't do that. I'm just saying there's a additional risk that you're bringing up here for absolutely no reason. I don't think
Yeah.
the chance and that risk of Penny Sewell going from the all first team All Pro, potentially Hall of Fame trajectory right tackle, to even being slightly worse at left tackle. I don't think that's big of a difference of Monroe Freeling's potential and Blake Miller's experience. It doesn't,
Yeah.
my mind can't necessarily wrap around why even make that unnecessary move when you already have so many other question marks on your team. So that's their first round pick. Second round pick, yeah, well, you
This-
go you go edge rusher from Michigan, Derek Moore. This guy's not my favorite. I'm not exactly sure what's the best way to put this. The Lions pass rush the last 2 years, it's been Aiden Hutchinson and someone else on the other side. If that's Alquin Muhammad from last year, if that's literally just throwing someone out there, who was at UDFA?
Barnett,
One more time.
Derek Barnett, UDFA.
UDFA.
Oh, I know who you're talking
He
about.
played
Yeah,
for the
yeah. Like,
Cowboys last year. Regardless, as a UDFA, he had about 8.5, 9 sacks. Like, it's a situation where you can throw almost anyone out there and they're going to be able to produce because you have such a talented, edge rusher and Aiden Hutchinson. Now, the situation is Derek Moore is not that freak athlete, is not that guy that's exceptionally big or strong. He is a very average player.
James Houston. It was James
James
Houston.
Houston.
James
James Houston
Houston.
the fourth.
Yes.
It's a situation where I feel like you have a situation where you can literally have any sort of edge rusher. Why not go and get someone that's, has higher upside, or a guy that's, almost has a superpower on one certain part of their game, not someone who is just not explosive like Derek Moore. Could have really done better with getting a better edge rusher to fit their system.
Yeah.
And then other than that, I do like some depth pieces in the back end. Keith Abney, corner from Arizona State. I think that's a fantastic deal.
Fantastic deal. Yeah.
He was mocked first half of the second round. He ended up being a fifth round pick, as well as Skylar Gill Howard, defensive tackle.
Another good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy that's a freak athlete at that defensive tackle. Yes, they have a lot of guys there. Tyreek Williams, their first round pick last year. They have a lot of depth, but getting a freak athlete like Skylar Gill Howard is just fantastic value in the six. Very heavy on the defense this draft, obviously, except for the first round pick, Blake Miller, which again, I won't talk more about him because it's not my favorite projection, not my favorite pick. This is just another draft class where just another team that is just really relying on the players that they have. There's a lot of question marks to me, especially when it comes to they didn't touch their safety position, which you might say,
Yeah.
oh, why are they doing that? They have Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. There's a chance Kirby Joseph might never play again. Brian Branch has also had significant injuries. Both these players are coming off big contract extensions. Both of them might, even if they do play, they might not be the same players. And you are just banking on that and not getting any sort of depth or potential replacements behind them. So I think this is another situation where they're kind of just saying, F you, and we know what we're doing, and we're putting full trust in the health of our guys.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. There's some good and some bad. Like you said. Yeah. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't think he's as good as David Montgomery, but I get the switch.
Yep.
The best thing was obviously the getting the center. I don't know why is my mind blank. Cade
Cade
Mays.
Mays. Yep.
And Cade Mays. The only thing with him is he's never actually started a full season playing
Right.
center, so this will be his first time playing. So I guess take that as you will, but I think this is just a rock solid signing and good
Mhm.
value, just in case if it doesn't work out. Yeah, offensive line is a big thing, and you talk about Blake Miller coming in. I really think that they had this immediately planned out,
Yep.
and they're basically saying, "Hey, Penei Sewell is Tristan Wirfs," and that we've had this trust for such a long time. And I don't think it's just Dan Campbell doing. I think it's Penei Sewell also saying, "Hey, I'm that guy. Put me in a better position.
It's
Put me in
it's
this position. I can get it done." And
it's
make
just
it
it's
because
not
this was a
worth the
this
risk. It would be
well,
dip
because this is the whole thing is I in my opinion, it's that, but then it's also the risk of you look at the difference between Blake Miller and Monroe Feeling is one guy is a guy that you could basically plug and play right now and will probably be solid. Another guy is probably has a much higher ceiling,
Yep.
but hey, like you need this guy to kind of this is a raw, refined prospect. You
And
look at where he was drafted. He was drafted in Carolina, where basically he's probably not gonna play
no,
his
and
entire first year.
it's a very valid point. He's a very raw player, but it's and I completely understand that. I just to me, as well as if you are a left tackle that has all the traits, this is the perfect team to go to where you are
Yes, I do
able
agree
to
with that. Yeah.
develop. So I know I understand both ways for sure. It's just now again, if it was a situation where it was Penny Sewell like contract year and you wanted more money to left tackle, I understand that, but that's not the case. Like we've seen with previous other players. So it's just
Yeah, I agree. It's a
yeah.
compounded risk. It's a compounded risk that didn't need to happen. So I like it and I don't like it. The
Mm,
other guys, Derek Moore, I think the whole thing with him is that that's kind of what the Lions have been. You talk about, and you talked about, and I agree, is that a lot of the time, Aiden Hutchinson, like you could place anyone there and they'll do whatever. But I think they've been looking for just kind of a standalone number two guy for a very long time.
yep.
And obviously, the big thing with their next 2 picks including Jimmy Wolder, who will probably be, your new linebacker like, your new linebacker now that Alex Anzalone's gone, is that they're from Michigan. Like, they're Michigan guys, and they love Michigan.
Yeah, they do.
Get some guys with Aiden Hutchinson with Michigan. Derek Moore, although and I think this is a thing with Dan Campbell too, is Dan Campbell doesn't care as much about athleticism as other teams do.
Mhm.
Dan Campbell wants Dan Campbell guys. Dan Campbell wants guys who are very high motor, very aggressive, get after the ball. I know we had Gabe Yakis here a lot, but that combined with that Michigan stance, I think Derek Moore was going to be his guy, whether or not. But I do agree. And I also have some concerns with Hutchinson because I don't think Hutchinson had his best season this year and kind of slowed down, especially towards the back end. So they're hoping that this guy who is there, instead of rotating all these guys, this guy can bring some pressure off of Aiden Hutchinson. So risky, right? And the
Yep.
Lions draft, especially last year, didn't provide as much value, I think, as they should have really done, picking a nose tackle in the first round. I like Keith Abney a lot. Yeah, I'm really surprised he went this low. I think maybe
Mhm.
size is a concern, but then again, Jalen Joel Pons went in the second round, so I'm not really sure what was up with that. But yeah, this Lions team, right? You get some replacements on the offensive line. You still have a big question at left guard. Who do you put in at left guard? Because you basically filled 4 spots. Do you put Christian Mahogany at left guard? I don't know who you put there. How will Jameer Gibbs' role be affected without Sonic and Knuckles? I know that's a big thing. Can the offense just stay consistent, right? You didn't lose a lot in the receiving core. You didn't lose a lot of receiving pieces. The defense is where I have questions. They definitely had their issues last year, and defensive line is a little bit of a worry. They went through so many injuries. Their linebacking core, who's going to replace that team captain guy like Alex Anzalone? Is Jimmy Roller going to be that guy to just immediately step in and be the
Mhm.
number 2 guy next to Jack Campbell? But by far, the biggest thing I have with this team is the secondary. They've put so much capital into it, and it has just not gone the way they wanted. DJ Reed, fine player, not as good as he was for the Jets, where he
Right.
was just an absolute lockdown corner, but he's a good starting corner. After that, I'm really not sure. Terrion Arnold, at least to me so far, has been a bust. He has had flashes, but has also been super inconsistent and
Mhm.
also has had a lot of issues, a lot of legal issues.
Yeah,
You put him on the longest yards squad as a defensive back.
as well as the injury concern there.
Yeah, and then
Ernest
speak
Ransall,
yeah, I was speaking of injury concerns, Ennis Rankisa, second round corner could be really good. He has not played, like, at all for
I think he's played like 16 snaps in his career.
and as a second round pick, that's not great. The same thing with the safeties. You look at
Yeah.
this secondary on paper and you're like, "Man, these guys should be good." Like, first round pick, star corner that they signed in free agency, second round pick, 2 all-pro safeties.
The
That's
third
not how it
highest
is
paid
in
safety
reality. Yeah,
and
that's not
Kirby
how it works in
Joseph.
reality.
Right.
And they have a lot of questions, and like you said, they're relying on, Keith Abney gonna be the guy. He's a 5th round pick. As much as it's a fall, he fell in 5th round for a
Right.
reason. Who are you gonna put in at safety? What are you gonna do? Because I don't think Brian Branch might not play at all this season. So, again, we talk about the Vikings and the Lions. It's very similar in that these are 2 teams that were riding the highest of highs. I think they reached their peak. I think that season where the Lions went 15-2 and the Vikings went 14-3 was the best they got. And now they're trying to pick up the pieces and put it back together. The Vikings with the quarterback position, the Lions with everything around them. Because remember, with this team, right, you're losing your starting guys that were playing for a long time. You have a lot of extensions that are probably going to have
I
to
was about
come
to
out.
say is that's
Jameer
that
Gibbs, Brian Branch, you've spent so much money on a ton of these guys. Who are you gonna do next? Because that cap space is gonna tighten up really quickly like Minnesota, and then you're gonna start having to bail ship on some of these guys. So,
no, and
I
that's
like
I'm gonna
or
throw it
yeah,
back
go
at
on,
you
yeah.
for the extensions, and that's the biggest thing is this team is in a dire mode of they have to win now because if they don't, then they come because they just re-signed Jack Campbell, who's an all-pro linebacker. They in the last few years they've re-signed Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph, but they still have to touch players like Jameer Gibbs, who, based off the contract of Devon A-Chain, is going to get a hefty bag. You have you have other. I mean, it's the not even just Jameer Gibbs, but it's also like they've had situations like this before. Help me real quick. The tight end, Sam Laporta.
Sam
They have to
Laporta, yeah, he's dealt with a lot of
extend him
and extend him, yeah.
exactly, and it's a situation where it's writing on the wall. It's the same thing happened with T.J. Hawkinson, a few years ago, where they weren't able to extend him at that second contract and had to trade him away, and therefore led to a fall of grace for the Lions until they were able to rebuild back up. So this is their window. It's right now. If not, then they have big question marks when it comes to running back position. I mean, they already had to give away David Montgomery because of cap situation. So be able to have to re-sign David Montgomery, Sam Laporta. Then you also have the massive contract of Jared Goff, who they keep on restructuring, which is just more and more and more money at the back end. So there are so many question marks about this team that if they don't win now, those question marks are going to be, and those questions are going to be too loud comparative to the answers that they're going to get.
Yeah, I think it's all about maximizing your window of opportunity and has it
Yep.
fallen short. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
wow. Woo! That was
51.
NFC North for you, baby.
Oh, man.
Goodness. The best division in the world. No, I mean, it could be up there. It's gonna be, let me say this, it's gonna be a super competitive division as always is. It's gonna be
Yep.
super heated. And to me, this is one of the few times I've seen this in a very long time where all 4 teams could possibly take the division if all goes
Hmm.
right for them. So
Yeah.
that's what I got, man. That's all I got. The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, man.
What a show, Josh. Thanks
Uh,
so much
yeah, dude,
for
I'm going to
talking
stop.
about some football and some NFC
Yeah,
North.
I'm going to stop screaming at you or, I'm going to put my phone down after I call it James Pierce's lawyer, Josh
Yeah, please
Jacobs.
do that. Get Josh Jacobs on the phone right now. I need it bad.
My gosh. Again, we talked about it. There's no reason to
You know
be
who'd be a
saying,
great replacement for him? Joe Mixon. Imagine that swap. Joe
man,
Mixon for Josh Jacobs.
that hopefully everything ends up clearing out for Josh Jacobs, not only for him as a player, but as well as for the Packers, because we kind of mentioned this, the depth behind him, there's not much, especially with losing Emmanuel Wilson to the Seahawks this past
Yes.
offseason as well. So hopefully everything clears out. Hopefully there was some big misunderstanding where it all gets worked out for everyone. Everyone ends up being happy. But regardless of that, James, I'm pretty happy.
I'm
And
happy too, man. You get to
yeah,
talk about football for another day.
yeah, dude.
It's good, man, and for everyone out there who watched the stream, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. We hope
Yeah.
you guys had a good time, 'cause I had a good time.
Okay.
Uh,
For everyone out there, please follow all the socials. We send out clips Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Those are clips, highlights of this stream. So again, thank you everyone for coming in, putting your input in, or just listening to us ramble and scream at each other for an hour and a half. So yeah,
Oh,
any
that's the
last
best part
words,
of it, man.
James?
Nah, man, thank you so much. Always good to hang out with my brother. You have fun at work tomorrow, and I will catch you on the flip side, my brother.
All right, James. I'll catch you later.
See ya.